Oh dear, another video with views about how Bethesda have messed up. Gonna be a fun comment section again, I'm sure.
Ah, here we go again.
Although, this time I'm aiming a little bit higher at the Xbox Zenimax level. Last week, news appeared that following on from the 2,000 jobs already cut this year, Xbox are shutting down 4 studios from the Zenimax side of the business. They were studios who were already under the Zenimax umbrella prior to Microsoft acquiring them, and we're talking some heavy hitters here. Among them, Arcane Austin, who are responsible for great games like Dishonored and Prey, but also for the dumpster fire that was Redfall, and Tango Gameworks, who made the smash hit Hi-Fi Rush, and the severely underrated Evil Within franchise. At a time where one of the common thoughts people have about Xbox is that they don't have enough high-quality first-party games, it seems an odd move to shutter decent studios with decent IPs, especially studios who have, in their own right, been very successful. My gut reaction to these kind of things is the old fiduciary duty creeping back in. For their shareholders, they need to pretend that infinite growth exists. In order to do that, when Game Pass has stagnated, hardware sales are slim, and they don't have many big selling games out right now, they need to shrink costs and pretend that the money they save by doing so is growth, essentially boiling the studios down to assets on a spreadsheet. Bloomberg's Jason Schreier reported that both Arcane and Tango were pitching their next games, a Hi-Fi Rush sequel for Tango and a return to a narrative single-player style for Arcane, but instead of greenlighting the ideas, the suggestion was that rather than consolidate by cancelling games already in production, Zenimax chose to shut down the 2 studios with projects that weren't yet greenlit and faced long expensive roads. Whether they still see value in the IPs like Hi-Fi Rush or Dishonored and allow the consolidated teams to work on them remains to be seen, but the reporting basically suggests, "My private jet insurance is due soon. Are these numbers on this spreadsheet doing anything now? I like your thinking, and I could do with some new golf clubs. It doesn't seem like they're doing anything right now. Good. Get rid of them." These closures seem to have disgruntled staff enough to leak internal memos and meetings, which have led to some great corporate BS being aired ahead of the public face of Xbox trying to spin it. And oh boy, do they just highlight how this is a nonsense decision. On the one hand, Matt Booty, head of Xbox Game Studios, told the teams involved that they want to prioritize on high-impact titles, investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games, suggesting that the company worth $3 trillion with a record revenue of nearly $212 billion is a bit strapped for cash when it comes to investing in celebrated studios. And I also assume he's forgetting that Bethesda is living off of Skyrim's success. But that's a clear direction, right? They want to focus on big open world style RPG games with lots of story and side content that take years to make and get no awards. Sorry, Starfield fans. Well, no less than a day after shutting down the studio who created Hi-Fi Rush, a game that has some of the sensibilities of an indie game, and was heralded as a surprise hit and hope for the future of Xbox, Matt Booty announced during a town hall, "We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards." And yes, I'm aware that Hi-Fi Rush comes across as small but had a reasonable budget, but it's a damn sight smaller and more prestigious than Bethesda's portfolio at the moment. More than anything, it shows that Tango could create small games right at the time they were pitching a sequel to Hi-Fi Rush. Honestly, the juxtaposition of those 2 quotes is so utterly baffling, I can't wrap my head around it, and it foreshadows bad things in the future of Xbox. In a company meeting, Matt Booty tried to rationalize the decision by suggesting that the closures were for internal structural problems. The company studios have been spread too thin, like peanut butter on bread, because of course making a loose Lord of the Rings reference is super cool when you're talking to people about losing their jobs. He continued, and leaders across the division felt understaffed. Jill Braff, the head of studios for Zenimax, added, "It's hard to support 9 studios all across the world with a lean central team and an ever-growing plate of things to do. We were about to topple over."
What? What the fuck?
I I can buy that Zenimax were clueless with managing the studios, however Zenimax has owned some of the studios that are now being jettisoned for over a decade. Acquisitions aren't just add to cart and check out. There's a lot of work and planning behind them, and a $7.5 billion acquisition is going to involve quite a lot of scrutiny. If a high-profile company that's making acquisitions to the tune of billions of dollars with the overall idea of trying to spend Sony out of business can't work out how to structure the management for its studios or hire the right people, maybe it shouldn't be making acquisitions to the tune of billions of dollars. I don't buy it, and I have personal experience to help with not buying it. My previous employee was 15 years at a company whose whole business model was acquiring other software companies, strip mining them of IPs, patents, and cherry-picked products, then shutting them down by either making it so inconvenient for the staff that they have to leave, or just doing lots of redundancies that happen so regularly it became a morbid joke. Needless to say, I sat through many town halls that showed great profits in the same week an email had been sent out talking about cost cutting. Larian, the makers of a somewhat successful RPG, have shown great success by bucking the trend of pretending that infinite growth exists, and have been quite vocal about their views on the way the games industry is cutting staff at the moment, themselves preferring to keep good staff rather than shrink and grow and try and make finances look good. They also understand that software development takes time. You won't necessarily be working 100% all the time, but eventually you will reap the rewards. But CG! Larian aren't beholden to shareholders because they aren't publicly traded. Well, you're right. But when the little-known publicly traded company Nintendo were in actual financial trouble, the CEO took a 50% pay cut to ensure that they could retain their staff, because keeping good staff who do good work is important. Xbox are not in financial trouble, as best I can see, and it is clear to anyone with common sense that even with a misstep like Redfall, Arcane and Tango were celebrated top-tier studios with solid IP and good staff. Xbox already have a first-party game problem, and shutting studios who are known for making good games is not gonna help. And that's only compounded by flagship franchises like Halo and Forza Motorsport releasing games that are getting lukewarm reception. We'll never know now, but if Arcane turn their hand to a single-player, action narrative focused Fallout game, or a sequel to Prey, or literally anything else in the Dishonored universe, it could have been great. And Tango were already positioned to continue the Hi-Fi Rush story and had showed that they had the wherewithal to make smaller games with prestige, as well as one of the most underutilized survival horror IPs around. Hey, he's waving!
Does it seem a little harder to move lately?
But maybe that's the point. Maybe this is a signal for the future of Xbox, where cynical cash-grabbing trash is king, and good games are a distant memory. Candy Crush makes somewhere in the region of $1 billion a year. I mentioned in the Skull and Bones video that the live service trend is still very much alive and kicking despite numerous failures. By the way, I had to Google Skull and Bones because even just a couple of months after it's released, it's so irrelevant I couldn't remember the name of it. Meanwhile, games like Dishonored make a fraction of that, have no long-term profitability, and almost certainly take more time and cost to make. Xbox has suggested there will be more cuts on the horizon, meaning that studios like Ninja Theory could be next. And I'm not the only person thinking that. The internet right now is littered with people asking if they're next. Once Hellblade 2 is out the door, they will essentially be in the same position as the studios who have been shut, with no active development of an upcoming game, making them a prime target. The kicker for Xbox and their future is, even if studios like Ninja Theory are not a target, the people working there are not going to feel secure. From a management level, if you feel like your studio is at risk because you're not currently working on something, or you aren't chasing the trends that make the shareholders get a raging hard on, you may be more inclined to seem busy or just start knocking out rubbish, which is likely how we end up with something like Redfall. If you're a talented dev or artist or even a co-founder, you're probably going to start looking elsewhere. Obviously, it's wild speculation and dot connecting, but the co-founder of Ninja Theory left just over a month ago, and the higher up the chain you go, the more likely you are to know that something bad is on the horizon.
This company is being bled like a stuffed pig, Mac, and I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this!
The knock-on effect, of course, will be that it is more difficult for them to find and keep good talent. Because who wants to work for a company where the risk of getting the chop is so high, and what you're being put to work on is soulless when you wanted to make great games? It's hard to see a bright future for Xbox right now, and it has been getting progressively more difficult as they grind away at stale franchises and chase trends that have already moved on by the time most companies catch up to them. In my video about Starfield, I suggested it was not
one of the most important RPGs ever made
to people who play games, but it was to them because the string of failures and the cost of acquisitions are catching up. Now we're starting to see real consequences of that. And the people hurt by these decisions are always the thousands of talented staff who just represent numbers on a spreadsheet to decision makers. I think Arcane Leon's Dinga Bakaba sums it up pretty well with, to any executive reading this, friendly reminder that video games are an entertainment/cultural industry, and your business as a corporation is to take care of your artists and entertainers and help them create value for you. Don't throw us into gold fever gambits, don't use us as straw men for miscalculations or blind spots. Don't make our work environments Darwinist jungles. You say you make us proud when we make a good game. Make us proud when times are tough. We know you can. We've seen it before.